you. Senator Jackson.
Thank you. So I hear from the employee folks, and it was kind of interesting with a couple exceptions, they were all women who stepped forward. The employer was a little more mixed, but definitely more predominantly men. So that's the first question, why is that? And I would like to say that it may be a privilege to get a job, but it's also a privilege to have people who are willing to work hard for you, as long as they are treated with respect. So to me, this is a little about both. And I appreciate this is a very difficult subject. I agree that I think 3 or 4 weeks in advance it can be very unrealistic. I'm thinking, what am I doing in 3 or 4 weeks? I haven't the foggiest idea. Yet to put someone on call so that their whole lives are disrupted, and not to know your schedule within 3 or 4 days is also, to me, unreasonable and actually a little disrespectful. And I've had employees of up to 13 people myself. So I've seen this from both perspectives. I think there's got to be a balance here. I think there's a happy medium here. We certainly don't want to extend this out so long that employees, the goal here is to make this a little easier for employees without adversely affecting employers. It just basically says, we're saying, what does it look like we're going to need over the next couple of weeks? And I agree there are times where employers need flexibility. Something comes up, a big sale, or you get a whole bunch of people showing up for dinner. I mean, we need to recognize that those are important things too, but we also need to recognize and honor the workers. Mm-hmm. The people who came in here were all working people who don't have any balance in their lives because most of them aren't being paid a heck of a lot. They don't have full-time nannies. Their child care is problematic to begin with, and it can cost them dearly when they put their child into child care and then discover they're not needed at their employer. They lose money that way. So we've got to recognize this is the 21st century. We've got to figure out a way. I'm going to support the bill today because I want to see this keep going forward, and I hope that the various industries and the chamber, who I know when they put their minds to it can do some brilliant work, will recognize that this is an issue whose time has come, and that we need to have them sit down and work with us on this in a way that's going to work for employers. You know, I sometimes feel that when we try to change things because we're living in a different world, that the response we get is the response we get from, you know, our 2-year-old grandkids, and that's no. You know, it's their knee-jerk. They say no to everything. But these are adults. These are businesses. These are the people that make California irrespective. I know Senator Stone loves to talk about how difficult it is to do business in California. We still are the 7th largest economy in the world. And in great measure, it's because we have people with brilliant ideas who hire people who are well-trained, who are hardworking, who are willing to help that business succeed. This is a two-way street. Mm-hmm. And I am just hopeful that you, and I'm sure you have listened, I know you to be a very thoughtful author, that you've listened to the concerns of business. Some of them are, I think, more significant than others, and recognize that the goal here is a win-win for both sides of the equation, and that we just have to recognize with more than 50% of women in the workforce, and many of them responsible for their child care, and the men too, we want to encourage people to have healthy, happy families and healthy, happy family lives. It makes them better employees. Mm-hmm. So this is something where both sides have to come together. No is not an answer here. So with that, I would ask you to consider some of the concerns. The length of time seems to me to be a little unrealistic. Too short a period of time is unfair to the workers. There has to be some way, if you have an earnest person who doesn't have the burdens of childcare or who has a childcare covered, who would like to work more time, to be able to do so, while at the same time not putting the employer in a position where he or she is just hopping on both feet because they're not sure of this, kind of the certainty that they need to do their work well in order to be successful. So I think that there's a balance here, and I look forward to working with you as you get to that balance.
Senator Jackson.
Move the bill. Okay, bill has been moved. Any other comments? Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Jackson has framed the issue very, very well. And really pointed out many of my concerns. Additionally, also as an employer, this would be very challenging. As a small business and as a group, my philosophy was never, and it was just counterintuitive, every cell in my body to ever turn anything that came in through the door away.
Yeah.
And it served our business well, because that what we could do and someone else didn't want to be there till midnight, we got done, and that enhanced our reputation, and people knew they could come and depend upon us. But if there was going to be a penalty for having someone change their schedule, it would negate the benefit that taking that additional work would entail. There also was mentioned, Ms. Barrera brought up how you bring in a new employee without this notice. Have you addressed that?
So if someone is a new hire and they just get added to the schedule, that doesn't change anybody else's schedule. That is just adding additional hours to the schedule. And in my experience, what employers would do is if they needed that person right away, they would put them on the schedule right away. If they didn't need that, they hired that person and they didn't need them for a couple of weeks, the person started in a couple of weeks. So hiring a new hire, hiring someone new and adding them to the schedule should not trigger any kind of penalty, because they're not changing someone's schedule. This is about modifying a schedule, and no schedule would be modified in that instance. Now, if they wanted to take hours away from somebody to add a new hire, it'd be problematic in a couple of ways. One, why do you need the new hire? Because you're taking hours away from someone, but then that would trigger modification pay. But just simply adding someone to a schedule that you have just hired would not be problematic.
And I know there's been multiple reference to the 7 exemptions, but I don't think those 7 include in the case of a restaurant, big party comes in, or a convention, as Senator Stone had mentioned, additional workload as a result of an unexpected order. How do we deal with that without the modification pay?
So that would trigger modification pay, and let me tell you what my thoughts are on that. If a restaurant gets a big boon of business, you get that bus of tourists coming in, you get that Little League team, and you have to call in an additional server, the restaurant is going to benefit. Shouldn't the worker benefit a little bit too? It's only about an hour's worth of pay for it could be up to 4 hours pay for the worker. So at minimum wage as it currently stands at $10, that would be $40. So if the employer is going to benefit, maybe the worker can benefit a little bit too.
Mr. Ramos had mentioned that his negotiated contract was 60 hours advance notice, but it wasn't mentioned for how many days of schedule. Do you know what that would be?
7 days.
So 60 hours notice, 5 days for 7 days.
That is correct.
So 12 days total, and your bill has 28.
That is correct. I am open to suggestion. I have told business numerous times, bring me a solution. No is not a solution.
Mr. Chair, could we ask Ms. Barrera from the chamber to come back up?
Sure. Ms. Barrera, can you step forward if you could?
So I know from experience, Ms. Barrera is very creative and, of course, knows all of the details of the bill inside and out.
Yeah, maybe.
Is there common ground to be found?
So I may recall our meeting a little bit differently. I actually recall giving a lot of suggestions, because when we had, we had a lot of issues last year with the proposal that started on the assembly side, and sat down and said, here are a lot of the issues that we can actually address moving forward. We talked about how a 14-day schedule may not work across the board. That was the bill on the assembly side last year for all employers because of different industry and business practices. We said that there is a lot of businesses who are looking at a 7 to 10-day one, and that may be more appropriate and may be more reasonable for a lot of employers to achieve that. With regards to the modification pay, we also talked about the fact that, hey, when you have this list of exceptions, it makes it really challenging for the reasons I stated for a supervisor dealing with a lot of employees to identify whether or not an employee who comes in at the last minute may satisfy one of those exceptions. How about when it is at the employee's request, no matter what the time period is, and an employer makes an accommodation for that employee, no modification pay would be applicable. I mean, those are the things, and we went through a list of different things. Maybe we should talk about modification pay being a penalty and not considered a wage with a 90-day look back to calculate it, which is a challenge for employers. Different proposals that would, at least if we are not going to be okay with a mandate potentially that subjects employers to litigation and costs, it may be something that could be implemented in a more reasonable and acceptable way for a lot of the employers. And so we are happy to have those discussions and continue on having those discussions, but I don't recall ever saying no out the gate. I just said, hey, this may be something that we will never be completely accepting of, but we can certainly be helpful in trying to find a way to achieve a more reasonable proposal that can be implemented.
Thank you. I think that's very encouraging. And rather than have the debate framed as predictability versus flexibility, if there's a way to find predictability with flexibility.
Senator Leno, I am completely open to that. I think the no that I'm referring to was when we did have these discussions, and I said, is this going to get you on the bill or at least neutral? And that was no. So we make these changes, but we still can't get a neutral, or we can't get someone on the bill. It makes it a little bit more difficult. I do remain completely open. Let me just say, I worked in the labor movement or represented workers for 30 years. I was always that person who said, I want business to succeed. I want business to do exceedingly well. The caveat was, take care of the people pushing the money up to you. So I've always, throughout my career, tried to look for a way that we could work together. I feel that sometimes in this regard, after the numerous meetings we've had, it is not a lack of how to, it's a lack of will to. And we need to get to a point where we all realize that this would benefit everyone. So I remain open. I am more focused on the end result, which is working something out, than in every little change. So I remain open. Come see me. Come see my staff. We want to make this work for everyone. Everybody's either going to be a little bit happy or everybody's going to be a little bit unhappy. So we can make it work.
So commitments from both of you. I will, of course, be supporting the bill today because the intent is completely supportable. But I think there are a lot of details that need to be attended to.
Yep, and happy to do that.
All right.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Senator Mendoza, if I may, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that for the Legislative Women's Caucus, this is one of our priority issues this year. So I wanted to make sure that we were aware of that.
Great. Thank you. Senator Mitchell.
I am struck, probably more so in this committee than many of the others I serve on, that we spend so much time dealing in the black and white versus recognizing that the real world spends most of its time in the middle and the gray. And so it's this notion that if we treat workers with respect, try to give them advanced knowledge about their work schedules, which we all depend upon in our own lives, that it's only perceived as a negative for business, that it's a job killer. I would welcome the opportunity in the context perhaps of this committee to bring representatives of workers and business together to have, perhaps not in the context of a bill, because that's what pits us, we're responding to language, but to have a global conversation about what we want for California's future as a business-friendly, pro-worker state, because I think it would be very naive of us to assume that one or the other leads to a solid general fund and a healthy, innovative state that we all want to live in and work in and grow businesses in and grow our families in. So I don't know if that's an interim hearing, Mr. Chair, but we often find ourselves with lines of support, lines of opposition, the same cast of characters, espousing the same arguments in support and opposition, and never having a much more relevant, I think, global conversation about what we as policymakers and leaders and business leaders and employee leaders in this state want to see available to everybody. We have the same conversation hearing after hearing, and I don't know where that gets us. Thank you for allowing me to get on my soapbox. I'll step down now.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Appreciate that. Well, thank you, members. Yeah, and I share your concerns. I think this bill does merit to move forward and continue to work with the opposition. I've had several conversations with the author. Same issues keep coming up that the opposition has brought forward, whether it be the amount of days and the enforcement. Some of the same issues that I think, the practicality between smaller business and the larger business, different things. But I think that we need to continue this bill in an effort that we continue to work with the opposition. And because I think I worked in retail before, and believe me, I like you, I wanted the extra hours, I wanted the flexibility, I wanted to make sure I was available and so forth. And sometimes when you're going to school, that is the best thing, to be flexible. So I understand that businesses need to count on us as well. So there's got to be a middle ground. But with that, we do have a motion. If you want to close, Senator.
Just very quickly, Mr. Chair, I could talk about this issue all day because it's very important to me and I lived it for many years. But what I would just say when it comes to the actual scheduling and the notice and the amount of time in this bill, it's a 7-day notice for a 21-day schedule. I've asked, when businesses said that doesn't work, I have asked, tell me what does work. A 2-day notice for a 7-day schedule is unacceptable, but tell me what works. I haven't gotten a response to that, so I am completely open to something that would be workable for management as well as for the worker. I remain open to that. I thank everyone on the committee for your thoughtful comments. I appreciate it very much, and I do think this is something that we can move forward and work together on, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you so much. Madam Secretary, there's a motion. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to appropriations. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mendoza, aye. Stone. No. Stone, no. Jackson. Aye. Jackson, aye. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Mitchell. Aye. Mitchell, aye.
Congratulations. Your bill goes out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members.
Now we'll have Senator Hall. Please step forward. Senator Hall, please go ahead and proceed.
Thank you.